Tom's dismissive words sliced through the air like a blade. "Stop being so dramatic, Kathleen. You knew this was coming." He stood there, smugly surveying our Palm Springs living room, his gaze lingering on the photo album I had spent weeks putting together. His smirk deepened as he flipped through the pages with little regard, creasing the corners I had so meticulously arranged. "Look at this," he scoffed, holding up the album. 25 years of marriage boiled down to a sad little scrapbook? Really? I remained silent, my eyes fixed on the album as he carelessly turned the pages. Each photograph was a fragment of our shared past, our wedding, the day we bought our first home, holidays, and family celebrations. But what Tom failed to realize was that within those pages lay something far more significant than just nostalgia. Closing the album with an abrupt snap, he exhaled as if unburdening himself. "Since we're being honest," he continued, "I've been seeing Jessica from the office for the last 8 months. She's young, ambitious, everything you used to be." He gestured toward his packed suitcase by the door, a signal of his departure. "I'm leaving tonight. We'll be staying at the Grand Vista Hotel until we find a place of our own." Jessica, his 28-year-old intern. Of course. I had suspected as much for a while now, noticing the late-night meetings and the unfamiliar scent of perfume lingering on his shirts. But rather than confront him, I had chosen patience, waiting for the right moment. I inhaled deeply, steadying my voice despite the trembling in my hands. "Well, that's quite the announcement. And on our anniversary, no less." Tom chuckled, the sound bouncing off the high ceilings. "Come on, Kathleen. Did you honestly think I was going to celebrate? The album, the dinner reservation you made at Lorenzo's? It's pathetic. You're desperate." Pushing myself up from the couch, I smoothed the emerald green dress I had chosen for the occasion, the same one he always claimed made me look old. Walking toward him, I reached for the album still clutched in his hands. "You're right about one thing, Tom," I said, my voice calm. "This evening isn't going as planned." His eyebrows lifted slightly as I pulled the album from his grasp. "What are you doing?" "Taking back what's mine," I responded, a small smile forming on my lips. "After all, you won't be needing these memories anymore." What Tom had yet to realize was that between the photographs, hidden among the relics of our past, was the key to my future and the end of the life he had so carefully crafted for himself. For months, I had known about his affair. That wasn't what had kept me awake at night. It was something far greater. 1 week ago, I had received news that changed everything. I could still recall the moment I checked those numbers on my lottery ticket, my hands trembling as I triple-checked them beneath the dim kitchen light at 3 in the morning. 6 numbers. 6 numbers that had turned me from a disregarded housewife into a multimillionaire. I had barely dared to breathe, afraid to believe it was real. And the first person I called? It wasn't Tom. It was Eleanor Wilson, the most trusted financial advisor in Palm Springs. Over the course of 3 meticulous days, we secured my assets, setting up everything in my name alone, protected by a team of expert attorneys who specialized in lottery winners. The trust was unbreakable, the accounts locked tight, my future carefully mapped out. I had even started browsing beachfront homes in Malibu, picturing a new life far from the desert heat and suffocating memories of this marriage. "You know what's funny, Tom?" I murmured, running my fingers along the album's spine. "I always thought discovering your affair, watching you walk away, would hurt more than this. But somehow it doesn't." I reflected on all the red flags I had ignored over the past 8 months, the unexplained late nights, the secret phone calls, the so-called weekend conferences that never had any follow-up reports. Tom hesitated by the door, his fingers tightening around the suitcase handle. His voice was laced with sarcasm. "Don't tell me you're having some sort of emotional breakthrough." His usual arrogance was there, but I caught the flicker of doubt in his eyes. For 25 years, he had been able to read me like an open book. But now? Now, he was uncertain. "Actually," I replied, settling into the antique desk he had insisted we purchase last year, yet another expense that had pushed us further into debt. "I've had quite a few breakthroughs lately. It's remarkable how clarity comes when you least expect it." Tom's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and smirked. "That's Jessica. She's waiting downstairs." He adjusted his tie, the blue silk one I had given him for Christmas, before smoothing his jacket. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the house and assets. Let's not make this messy, Kathleen. Handling this like adults is better for everyone. I gave a small nod, watching as he fidgeted with his watch. No doubt he was already calculating what he would get from the divorce, how he would maintain his lifestyle with Jessica by his side. What he didn't realize was that in exactly 3 minutes, his entire plan would unravel. The undeniable proof of my fortune was securely tucked between these pages, waiting for the perfect moment to be revealed. Before you leave, I said, flipping open the photo album once more, there's something I need to show you. Carefully, I slipped a document from between the pages, nestled among the photos from our Hawaiian vacation, the last trip we had taken together. Of course, most of Tom's time had been spent glued to his phone, sending endless messages to Jessica while pretending to respond to work emails. The paper I held was crisp, official, carrying a weight of importance. I grasped it delicately between my fingers and watched as Tom's expression shifted from impatience to mild curiosity. What's that? Another one of those marriage counseling brochures, he asked with a dry chuckle. I think we're past that, don't you? Not quite, I responded, straightening my posture, allowing the confidence I had been cultivating since last week's discovery to settle in. It's something much more interesting. I took my time unfolding the document, making sure every motion was deliberate. The letterhead of the California State Lottery Commission gleamed under the glow of our living room lights. Tom's brow furrowed as he attempted to read it from across the room. Kathleen, what are you up to? His voice had lost its usual mocking tone. 7 days ago, I won the lottery, Tom, I stated, keeping my voice steady. $98 million. After taxes, that leaves me with just over $60 million. The color drained from his face. His grip on the handle of his suitcase loosened, and it dropped to the floor with a dull thud. You're lying, he whispered, though his eyes remained locked on the document, the official seal, the verification codes, the staggering number printed in bold ink. I'm not, I said simply. I've already consulted financial advisors, lawyers, investment specialists. Everything has been arranged and secured. The money is mine, Tom. Every last cent of it. He took a hesitant step toward me, then another, his face contorting with shock, disbelief, and something else, desperation. Kathleen, sweetheart, let's just talk for a second. You know I still care about you. Maybe I acted a little too quickly. A little too quickly? I repeated, my voice calm but unwavering. Like when you booked that romantic getaway in Santa Barbara with Jessica. Or when you decided to buy her that diamond bracelet with money from our joint account. His phone buzzed again, the sound insistent. Jessica was still downstairs, probably growing impatient, wondering what was taking him so long. The irony was almost poetic. She was about to meet a version of Tom she hadn't expected. You can't do this to me, he said, his voice cracking under the weight of the situation. We're married. I have rights. I exhaled slowly, feeling a lightness settle over me, a weight I hadn't realized I had been carrying for years finally lifting. Actually, Tom, I can. And I already have. I gestured toward the door. Jessica's waiting for you. You really shouldn't keep her waiting. After all, the two of you have a thrilling new life ahead. For the next hour, Tom scrambled to salvage whatever he could from the wreckage of his carefully laid plans. It was almost fascinating to watch. The arrogance that once dripped from his every word was now replaced with forced charm. The smirk that had once been so smug softened into what he probably believed was an endearing smile. I had seen this performance before, but never with stakes this high. We can fix this, he pleaded, pacing back and forth across the living room. Think about it, Kathleen. 25 years. That has to mean something. We've built a life together. He gestured around our home, the same home he had mortgaged twice behind my back to cover his gambling debts. Sure, I made some mistakes with Jessica, but that was nothing. It wasn't real. You are my wife. I remained seated, still holding the photo album in my lap. Your wife? I echoed, tilting my head slightly. That's interesting. You didn't seem to remember that an hour ago when you were calling me pathetic. His phone vibrated again. He hesitated before silencing the call. Jessica was still waiting, still unaware that her fairy tale had just turned into something much different. "I'll end it with her," Tom said suddenly, grabbing his phone. "I'll call her right now. I'll do it in front of you, if that's what you need. Would that convince you?" I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for him. "Almost. You don't get it, do you?" I said softly. "This isn't about Jessica. It's about 25 years of lies, manipulation, and disrespect. Winning the lottery didn't change things, it just gave me the clarity to finally see it for what it is." Something in his expression darkened. The desperate charm vanished, replaced with a simmering resentment. "You think you can just walk away from me?" His voice dropped, his posture stiffening as he loomed over me. "After everything I've done for you? I made you who you are. Before me, you were just some small-town girl with big dreams and no direction." I met his gaze without flinching. "And now, I'm a small-town girl with $60 million and an excellent lawyer." I gave him a polite, almost amused smile. "Would you like his number?" "You'll be hearing from him tomorrow anyway." Tom's jaw tightened. "I'll fight you for every penny," he spat. "I'll drag you through court for years if I have to. You think you can just enjoy that money while I make your life miserable?" Without a word, I reached into the photo album and pulled out another document. My lawyers had already prepared everything. They've compiled undeniable evidence of your affair, your reckless gambling, and the money you've siphoned from our accounts. They even have receipts for all those gifts you purchased for Jessica with our shared credit card. Imagine how that will play out in court. The color drained from Tom's face once more. His phone vibrated again, this time for the last time. As he glanced at the screen, fear flickered in his eyes. The preview of the message was visible even from where I sat. "What's going on up there?" "My father is waiting at the restaurant with the investor. If we don't show up now, we'll lose everything." A knowing smile spread across my lips as understanding settled in. "Let me guess," I said slowly, "Jessica's father was supposed to invest in your latest business venture? The one you've been secretly funding with embezzled company money?" Tom stumbled backward, collapsing onto our Italian leather sofa, an expensive purchase he had once insisted on. His mouth opened, but the words barely came out. "How did you?" I reached into the album and pulled out another document, carefully smoothing it out on the coffee table. "It's incredible what people will tell you when they assume you're just a naive housewife," I said, my tone light but firm. "Take Amanda, from accounting, for example. She's been suspicious of those irregular transfers for months, but you kept brushing off her concerns. She was relieved to finally hand over the documentation to someone who actually listened." Tom's face contorted with anger. "You've been spying on me?" he hissed. "You had no right." "Actually," I countered, meeting his furious gaze, "as your wife and a shareholder in the company, I had every right." The board of directors agreed when my lawyers presented the evidence last week. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over him. "They're convening tomorrow morning to discuss your future with the company. I imagine that meeting will be rather short." His phone buzzed again. This time, with unsteady hands, he answered the call. "Jessica, I can't make it. Something's come up." He winced and pulled the phone away from his ear as angry accusations rang through the speaker. Eventually, he hung up, shoulders slumping. His voice was barely above a whisper. "You've ruined everything." I shook my head. "No, Tom. You did that on your own. I'm just refusing to clean up your mess anymore." I rose from my seat and walked toward the towering windows, the city skyline glittering beyond the glass. "You know what's funny? If you had just been honest, if you had asked for a divorce like a decent human being, I might have shared some of the lottery winnings with you. Not half, of course, but enough." I turned back to face him. "And now?" "Now, you get nothing." His expression darkened, but before he could react, I added, "Well, not quite nothing. You get to keep the consequences of your choices." The board has decided to press charges for the embezzlement, by the way. They're particularly interested in those offshore accounts you thought were hidden. Tom's face turned a sickly shade as panic set in. He lunged for the photo album, perhaps hoping to destroy any remaining evidence. But I had already removed the crucial documents. What was left were just photographs, snapshots of a life that no longer existed. You're cold. Calculated. Manipulative, he spat, but then stopped himself, realizing the hypocrisy in his words. I tilted my head slightly. I learned from the best, I replied evenly. Though I do owe a little gratitude to Jessica as well. If she hadn't been so eager to brag about your future together during her yoga class, I might not have caught on to the embezzlement so quickly. Her friend Olivia is quite talkative after a couple of glasses of wine. Realization dawned on him, the full weight of his downfall sinking in. Every plan he had meticulously crafted, every lie he had spun, was unraveling. He wasn't just losing his marriage or his relationship with Jessica, he was losing everything. The police will be here soon, I said, glancing at my watch. Amanda officially filed the report this afternoon. You might want to use this time wisely and call a lawyer. A criminal defense one. You're going to need it. A sharp knock on the door shattered the tense silence. Tom flinched, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal searching for an escape. But there was none. We were 15 stories up. That'll be Detective Harrison, I continued, walking toward the door. He's been particularly interested in those offshore accounts. Wait. Tom's hand shot out, gripping my arm tightly. His fingers dug in, desperate. We can work something out. I'll sign whatever you want, divorce papers, a confession about the affair, anything. Just don't do this. I looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. My voice was calm but firm. Remove your hand, Tom. Now. The knock came again, more forceful this time. Tom hesitated before releasing me, stepping back in defeat. You don't understand, he pleaded. There are other people involved. Powerful people. If this gets out. I smoothed my sleeve unfazed. Oh, I know all about your powerful people, I said casually. Like Michael Anderson, who's been helping you funnel money through his shell companies. Tom stiffened. He turned on you 3 days ago, I added. Apparently, he's more afraid of federal prosecution than he is of you. His complexion turned ghostly. That's not possible. Michael would never. He did, I interrupted. Right after the FBI showed him evidence that you planned to pin everything on him. I allowed a small, knowing smile to form. Your text messages were quite revealing. You really should have been more cautious with your phone's password. Using 1234 isn't exactly high security. The knocking on the door had intensified into forceful pounding. Mr. Thomas Wilson? This is the police. Open the door. Tom's eyes darted in desperation as he made one final, frantic appeal. Think about what this will do to your reputation. Everyone will know you sent your own husband to prison. Is that really what you want? To be remembered as the vindictive wife who? I cut him off before he could finish. Who exposed a criminal? Who helped reveal millions in corporate fraud? Who protected innocent investors from being scammed? Yes, I'm more than fine with that reputation. With that, I swung open the door. Detective Harrison stood there with 2 uniformed officers. He's all yours, Detective, I said smoothly. I think you'll find his phone especially interesting. He was just about to erase some incriminating messages. The moment the officers moved toward him, Tom's face twisted in fury. You planned all of this. The photo album, the anniversary dinner, it was all a setup. I met his glare with calm certainty. The lottery win? That was pure chance. But everything else? Yes, I planned it carefully. Consider it a 25-year investment finally paying off. As they led him away, he turned back with one last desperate attempt. What about Jessica? Are you going to ruin her life too? I held his gaze. Jessica made her own choices. But don't worry, she's already received copies of your messages with Michael Anderson, including the ones where you called her a useful idiot who'd take the fall if anything went wrong. I imagine she's a little preoccupied right now, likely speaking with her lawyer. Tom's shoulders slumped as the officers escorted him out. I watched in silence. The photo album still sat on the coffee table, a collection of memories built on nothing but deception. But I didn't need those memories anymore. I had something far better. A future of my own making. 1 year later, I leaned back in my chair, watching the sun cast streaks of gold and orange across the Pacific horizon. My new home in Malibu had replaced the arid winds of Palm Springs, and the scent of saltwater had long washed away the remnants of my past life. The media frenzy surrounding Tom's arrest had been intense but short-lived. Corporate fraud rarely held public interest for long, especially when fresh scandals constantly surfaced. In the end, he struck a plea deal, agreeing to testify against his former associates in exchange for a reduced sentence. 8 years instead of 20. Jessica had vanished to Arizona in the aftermath. Whatever dreams she had of becoming the wife of a wealthy executive had crumbled. I unfolded the morning newspaper, another article about the case. This time, the press praised the whistleblowers who had exposed the fraud. My name appeared alongside Amanda from accounting as one of the key figures in bringing the scheme to light. But that wasn't the story that caught my interest. Instead, I focused on the business section, where an article highlighted my new charitable foundation. Winning the lottery had granted me freedom, but it was the foundation that gave me purpose. We focused on helping women escape financial abuse, offering resources and support to those trapped in situations like the one I had endured. Every success story felt like a personal victory. My phone buzzed, a message from Eleanor Wilson, my financial advisor. The foundation's latest investment had yielded excellent returns. More funds meant more resources for the women we supported. I smiled, reflecting on how far I had come since that night with the photo album. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about tearing someone else down. It's about building something better for yourself. Last week, an unexpected letter arrived from Tom. The prison-issued envelope sat unopened on my desk for days before curiosity got the better of me. Inside, I found pages filled with apologies, explanations, and pleas for forgiveness. He claimed to have found faith behind bars and wanted to make amends. He also mentioned hearing about my foundation's success and suggested that perhaps, once he was released, we could work together. I couldn't help but laugh at the predictability of it all. Even in prison, he was still searching for an angle, still scheming for a way back to money. I shredded the letter without responding. That evening, at a charity gala for the foundation, I recounted the story to James, an investor and one of our major donors. He was a widower who had become deeply involved in our cause. As I finished, he let out a warm, genuine laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "Some people never change," he said, handing me a glass of champagne. "But others." He gestured around the room. Everywhere, women who had once been trapped in toxic situations were now thriving. Some had started businesses, others had reclaimed their independence. Others transformed completely, I agreed. Then, with a knowing smile, I added, "Speaking of transformation, remember that photo album that started all of this? I finally found a good use for it." I had donated it to a museum's exhibit on financial fraud and domestic abuse. The album now sat encased in glass, its pages open to reveal the hidden compartments where I had stored the evidence that brought Tom down. Below it, a plaque read, "Sometimes the strongest chains are the ones we think we can't break." James lifted his glass. "To breaking chains," he declared with conviction. "And to building bridges," I added, my thoughts drifting to the countless women we had already supported and those who still awaited our help.